Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this Oceanics webinar series. Today, we are extremely happy to welcome Hervé Claustre, who is at the Lab of Oceanography of Villefranche. So Hervé is going to talk to us today about filling gaps in ocean observations with BGC, Argo, and machine learning. So as usual, we'll have around 45 minutes talk, and then you can unmute your mics and discuss or ask questions to Hervé. You can also use the chat to post your questions, and I can ask them to Hervé after the presentation. So Hervé, thanks again for accepting this invitation, and please take it off.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation, and good afternoon to everybody. So basically, I am an observer, oceanographer observer, and our group in Villefranche, since I would say many years, maybe 20 years, we are deeply involved in trying to develop observation system, observation platform to be cost effective in some way, to increase the spatio-temporal resolution of the observation, which is a prerequisite, I would say, to do science after. And since now, nearly 7-8 years, we have begun to see the power of machine learning beside the classical statistical regression, and we have, through collaboration, begin with the group to develop collaboration to use the observations that we have developed and to combine them with others. So basically, sorry, yes, I will start to some historical reference. It's not a biogeochemical oceanographer, but it's a physical oceanographer, Walter Munk, that in 2000 was writing a synthetic paper, oceanography before and after the advent of satellite. And I have quote some of his sentence. He was speaking of a century of undersampling, so the previous century. He was saying that in the 70s, we were living under the axiom that what is not done from ship is not oceanography. And with respect to the discovery of mesoscale activity in the late 60s, for 100 years, this overwhelming mesoscale dynamics has fallen through the loose mesh of traditional sampling. And this is typically, I would say, applying to biogeochemistry and observation in biogeochemistry. There is another physical oceanographer, Stommel, who in '89 was writing a paper in the Oceanography magazine, the Slocum mission, and in his paper, he was looking forward, and he was in 2021. And what he was writing established the World Ocean Observing System, WOOS. Now we have the GOOS, Global Ocean Observing System, using a fleet of small neutrally buoyant floats. That is typically Argo float called Slocum that draws their power from the temperature stratification of the ocean. And we begin to have energy source that we can taken from the temperature stratification. Some floats begin to work like this. They migrate vertically through the ocean and blah, 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 by gliding on wings. That is a concept of gliders. And each day we get about 3,000 CTD profile. Actually, it's only 300, and it's already a revolution. So this is, I think, what's a nice introduction to the Argo program that started in 1999. And here you have the characteristic, I would say, of this program. On the left, which is very interesting, is both, I would say, under the IOC UNESCO, but also on the World Meteorological Organization, so because the in-situ profile of temperature are, for example, essential for meteorological forecast. This is a contribution of 35 countries with data in open access. That is very important, and that made the success of Argo. And this data can be available in real time, I would say, for operational agency for forecast. And the data are accessible in delayed modes, that is for scientific usage. So delayed mode take an expert look at the data. And just this is an illustration, quite old already, 2018. We have now around 130 temperature profile salinity aqua each year, and 95% of this profile yearly come from Argo. So we have 5% coming from the float in the open ocean now, and we have 95% coming from the Argo program. So basically, what is doing an Argo float? An Argo float has a typical cycle of 10 days. So starting with descent, the float go to 2,000 meters, where it will drift for around 9 days. And on the 9 days, the 9th day, he go back to 2,000 meters and then come back to the surface, taking his temperature, salinity profile, and now BGC Argo variables. Data transmission is through Iridium technology, and now we have a two-way communication. This means that we can change in some way the sampling strategy according to the scientific needs if required. So I would say 15 years ago, we begin, I am also working on ocean optics, and the optic measurements have benefit from the miniaturization. And here you have some kind of measurements, PUC sensors that was available, I would say, 15 years ago, where you have measurements for chlorophyll concentration, for the suspended particles, and for the so-called color dissolved organic matter. So the idea came to implement such kind of sensor on the Argo floats that have been deployed and developed by the physical oceanographer. So I switch quickly to the so-called biogeochemical Argo program. We have developed a science plan and implementation targets in 2016. If you want to have more information, you can download this science and implementation plan on this website. We have identified research topic dedicated to, I would say, what we call ocean health and also carbon cycles. So basically, the 5 research topics are the biological carbon pump, the identification of phytoplankton communities, the oxygen minimum zone and their relation to the nitrate cycling, carbon uptake at the ocean surface, and acidification. And also at that time, we had also identified some kind of, I would say, more operational or management topics, because we anticipated that sooner or later, the BGC Argo array could help in working and giving information for the managing of living marine resource, fisheries, and also to contribute to carbon budget verification through better estimation of the flux at the ocean atmosphere interface. So basically, the program and the implementation plan recommend to deploy 1,000 operational floats, measuring 6 core BGC variables beside the temperature and salinity for the classical core Argo. So namely the chlorophyll A concentration, the suspended particles that is measured by the backscattering coefficient, the downweighing irradiance, the oxygen concentration, the nitrate concentration, and the pH for acidification. So here is where we are presently. So you have you can download from the website the monthly map of the status. You can see that for the moment we have 455 operational float, but you have to take care. Most of them have oxygen, but we have only 13 float circle that have the 6 variable. So the BGC Argo program has not reached its target operational, the operational target of 1,000 float with the full 6 variable. In any case, you have here the number of profiles so far acquired and its color code. So in red, it's only the real-time data that have been QC using algorithm online within 24 hours. Sometimes these data are adjusted through algorithm, and the delayed mode data are in green. So you can see that the process of qualifying the data, which require the collaboration of all the countries participating to BGC Argo, is some process that is beginning to be more and more operational, but we are still in transition phase to have more delayed mode and adjusted data than we can have for the moment. This is just example of the power of long-term time series. Here you have a time series in the subtropical Atlantic gyre, so nearly 6 years at a resolution of one profile every 10 days. And just I wanted to showcase here the interest of multidisciplinary approach and the multidisciplinary measurements that are carried on the single platform. Here you have the part, the photosynthetic available radiation, and you can see the seasonal variation of the PAR, which is due to the seasonal variation of the surface PAR due to the sun in some way, and also to the attenuation of the light here. And you can see that the deep chlorophyll maximum is typically following the forcing by light. And you can see also the backscattering, that are the particles more or less connected to the so-called particulate organic carbon. We can see that we have seasonal export of carbon even in such very, I would say, oligotrophic, very desertic waters. The reverse here, you have a system in the Southern Ocean. We have a time series. We can see also the impact of mixing on the nitrate. And you can see that we have the so-called blooms, highly seasonal events of biological production. And you can see some dot here, which I will come just after, are characteristic of what we call the gravitational pump, the sinking of large particles, and that contribute to the sequestration of carbon in some way. This is typically a chlorophyll profile and the backscattering profile in two environment example of the Southern Ocean, near Kerguelen. East of Kerguelen, we have iron-rich water, so it's been very productive. And you can see we have the profile here with many spikes that are characteristic of large particle, while the background here that we can extract give information of the small particles. And in the east part of Kerguelen, we have some spikes in chlorophyll. This means that we have fresh vegetal material that can reach 1,000 meters. This is the reverse for another system west of Kerguelen, where you still have large particles that sink, but you have no fresh material from vegetal. So it's such kind of proxy, basically the events that we can see here and the nature, either only carbon or chlorophyll, that give us some information of the nature of particles that sink. And recently, Nathan Briggs, who was a postdoc in our group in Villefranche, tried to aggregate all the data related to the spikes, the events, for 30 seconds of bloom in the North Atlantic as well and in the Southern Ocean. So because these events are very rare, he was binning for each event every 50 meters and every 6 days. And he was able to show that after the bloom, we have an increase of large particle to depth. But at the same time, here is the slope that is reproduced here. We can see that we have small particles that are beginning to penetrate in the deep ocean. And this is the trace of fragmentation. And fragmentation is very important for us as a biogeochemist, because this means that the carbon, rather than going very quickly to depths where it could be sequestrated, it will stay in the so-called mesopelagic zone or the twilight zone, where it could be reworked by biology, by bacteria, and come back as CO2 more quickly than if transported by large particles. Now, I will show you some beside the 6 BGC Argo variables, some new technological, I would say, developments that are coming. So we have begun to deploy floats with this instrument, which is a so-called underwater vision profiler that measures the size spectrum of the particle between 100 micron and 2 millimeter. Here you have a sequence of size as a function of time during a bloom south of the Tasmania. And you can see as soon as the size increase, we begin to see that the sinking of particle is increasing. So here we have the capability directly to measure sinking speed of particles during bloom events. So this is quite unique data. And recently we deployed floats 1 month ago, 4 floats in the Labrador Sea that have, with the same sensor, we have the capability to make image analysis with onboard algorithm that transmit just the result of the analysis because we are not able to transmit the images. It's too costly and take too much time and too much energy of the float. So we are, since 1 month, collecting some preliminary data of such results of floats operating, both measuring the size and the general composition of the zooplankton community. This is not yet implemented on floats, but we have colleagues working on echo sonar, micro sonar, that are put on the head of elephant seal, and that can target small krill or small fishes, so that have the potential to extend the BGC Argo towards more the fisheries. So when I was mentioning the management contribution of BGC Argo, this is part of this. And this sensor is presently implemented and tested on BGC Argo float. And you can see this our travel of the elephant seal over 1 day. And you can see it nicely collect and identify the migration of such kind of tiny organism, small pelagic fish or krill, we have to identify, but has the potential to give some information of the ecosystem in some way. Here is quite very new results. We deployed in the Labrador Sea the first float with hyperspectral measurements, not only the downwelling irradiance, but also the upwelling irradiance that allow us to derive the remote sensing reflectance here spectrally that we can connect on of the measurements that are performed by ocean color satellites. So there are quite a few applications. More wavelengths should help us to decipher more easily the phytoplankton communities according to their pigmentation in some ways, and also to address the detrital part and the color of dissolved organic matter. We have 9 floats like this that will be deployed in 9 different environments. And this could support the, I would say, the commission phase of the PACE mission, which is an hyperspectral sensor that will be deployed by NASA in early 2024. So we expect to have our 9 floats ready to develop CalVal application. And radiometry is more and more used in some kind of modelization, connecting ocean color to biogeochemistry. There are more or less recent examples from Dudkiewicz and Terzik, for example. So now this serves as an introduction of what can we do with the synergetic combination, I will say, of remote sensing and floats. So because we have optical sensor on float, and here you have chlorophyll A, backscattering, the diffuse attenuation coefficient, that is a typical proxy, I will say, of the transparency waters and the CDOM. This is more or less measured by floats and by satellite. So easily, we can see that the float bring the vertical dimension that the satellite cannot see, because the satellite just look 1/5 of the euphotic layer. So this means a few meters in bloom condition in the Labrador Sea, for example, up to 40 meters in subtropical gyre. But the vertical dimension is lacking, and the profiling float, so plus the remote sensing, could give complementary information. So this is before moving on the machine learning part, in illustrations that the measurements in situ by the float can give very nice results when compared to satellite. So here it's a measure the time series of a float in the Icelandic basin here, but here is at each time the float is surfacing, we make a matchup of chlorophyll A from satellite and the PIC. PIC is particulate organic carbon. It's linked to the calcium carbonate, essentially of coccolithophorids, a typical species of phytoplankton that make the water color blue Turkish in some way. So here you have the peak measurements, so and the satellite trajectory, the float trajectory, and below here is what the float is measuring at the surface. So we have the chlorophyll A adjusted and the BBP, the backscattering coefficient, that give us some information, and you can see that we have quite a nice correlation between what the satellite is seeing, that give the spatial, I would say, extension, and what the float is measuring. But the float give us information on the vertical dimension. So you have from the surface 2000 meters, the same time series, and you can see that for this event here, we have backscattering not only at the surface, but we have a huge amount of backscattering that is sinking in some way to the deep ocean, while we have nothing in terms of chlorophyll. So this we expect is the mineral part of the bloom that is sinking, but it takes a long time. And for example, if we monitor during the drift of the float, so for 9 days, the float is at 1000 meters. So we can register, because we power the sensor, we can register this event, and we can see that it takes more or less 6 months for the water column to be in some way rinse and to become clear enough at depth. And this just showcase that we have a surface predictor here from satellite that could be used to infer carbon flux at depth. So this was a good example to illustrate what we have tried to do with machine learning. So as I said, our group is not specialist, but we have been interested in very early on this technique, and we have collaborated with some groups on this. And so the first papers that we published was Raphael Sauzet. So many of the slides that I present now come from the PhD of Raphael or of the work she has done after. So we have developed a neural network to connect satellite data with BGC Argo. And the basic idea was to say that the vertical aspect of biooptical variable like backscattering is depending on the stocks that we can measure by the satellite and with the thickness of the mixed layer. And if we have the thickness of the mixed layer and the stocks from the satellite, maybe we could try to model the verticality of the profile. So that was the basic idea. So we use BGC Argo data as a training data set, because BGC Argo data has both the stock and the TS component. And this was the basis of this neural network. So here I show the principle of this model that called SOCA, Satellite Ocean Color and Argo Data to Vertical Distribution of Biooptical Properties. So now we have improved what is published in this 2016 paper as part of products that we deliver for Copernicus. But basically the input, we have a surface component, which is no more the chlorophyll A and BBP from satellite as before, but 5 remote sensing reflectants. We have added a sea level anomaly to potentially take into account information on the mesoscale process. We have a vertical component for temperature and salinity, and now it's using PCA reduction to be more efficient. And we have a geolocalization component. And so now we are able to derive vertical profile of backscattering that we can convert through classical regression to particulate organic carbon. and the fluorescence of chlorophyll A, which was not the case before, but we are doing this since 3 months. There is a product that I will present later. So basically, I showcase before that we have a background profile plus spikes. So this means that what we have done here is just removing all the spikes. So it's the small particle components that we are able to model. We are not able to model the large particle component for the moment. And here is some details not very interesting for the verticality. So these are the validations. So we have now from our BGC Argo matchup, we have nearly 28,000 satellite matchups for both BBP and chlorophyll A. And here you have the BBP from floats and from the model and over the vertical dimension. We are quite satisfied by this kind of retrieval. This is for chlorophyll A, that is quite new. Similarly as BBP in some way. So we have also some floats that we didn't put in the training or the validation that was so-called independent data and independent floats. So this is a comparison for a float in the Southern Ocean of the backscattering measure and the chlorophyll measure with respect to the backscattering and the chlorophyll model. As you can see, when we have clouds, this means that we do not have the input at the surface, so we have some holes. So we fill some gaps, but not all gaps. So maybe there are methods that I would be happy to discuss to see how we could improve such kind of products. And this is an interesting way, I would say, for us. Here is the parameterization of Julia Huitz that in 2006 we published this paper where we were working on the HPLC database and connected already with satellite to infer the vertical distribution of chlorophyll from the knowledge of the surface concentration only. And we can use HPLC database. So HPLC is the reference measurements, chemical measurements, chromatographic measurements that give us the best quality, I would say, of chlorophyll A profile. So it's what we have done before. And now using SOCA, we are able to, I would say, a posteriori reconstruct matchup with previous cruises that were under the satellite. We have the information from the satellite and we can see a posteriori what is the validity of our algorithm. And we are beginning to use such kind of reinterpolation of the data in some way or through the matchup to test our new methods to develop delay mode quality control for the BGC Argo program. So each time we change something for the global data set, we plan. So we have done once and we have shown that it's working. So for us, it's a way to take the best use of reference data set to qualify the way we are trying to improve our delay mode chlorophylla within the BGC Argo dataset. So just to show, this was the database that we had in 2016 for the paper. Now is the database for in 2021. So we have redo the training and so on. So as soon as we have more data, but the training is much better. And so we have this product available from Copernicus, which is, we have two ways. We have weekly fields from 1998 to up to 2019 and monthly climatological fields. Just a short application of this. This is a climatology of chlorophyll for the May and for POC. And if we take a transect from here to here, you can see that we see the deep chlorophyll maximum in subtropical gyre. That is consistent with expectation and the North Atlantic bloom. And here for the North Atlantic bloom, we have chosen the month of May. You can see some kind of export of material, which is linked to the what I have shown before. Just to mention that is very recent. We have work for various reasons, but to see and to evaluate if we could model the vertical distribution of light, namely the photosynthetic available radiation, and the floats measure light at 3 wavelengths, 380, 412, and 490 nanometer. Basically, using the same component as for SOCA BBP and chlorophyll A. And it works quite well. This is the retrieval on the 20% of the float dataset. And this is an example for a float in the subtropical gyre. So, and the potential application for us is to have virtual light in some way when the float do not measure the light. Actually and presently, only the French float is measuring light. The US float are just starting. They have one float with one sensor that measure light, so they will, but they were in some way behind the European float. So for the historical database, it's a way to have the light for all the floats. And also because we have a more monotonous decreasing with depth, it's much easier to take the derivative, and the derivative is the diffuse attenuation coefficient that we can invert in some kind of biogeochemical properties. Now, I will move on the second part of the machine learning that we have developed, is to, in fact, to infer the distribution, vertical distribution of carbonate and nutrients from oxygen measured by float. So it's the so-called CANYON. Raphael liked the acronym. So CANYON is carbonate system and nutrient concentration from hydrological properties and oxygen using a neural network. And so the principle of this, the scientific basis of this, is that oxygen that is measured by floats is intrinsically linked to the production and the respiration of matter. So it's linked to CO2 and the carbonate variable in some way, and to the nutrients in another ways. When you respire particulate matter, you generate CO2 and nutrients, and reversely, when you consume CO2, you consume also nutrients. So there is a link. And now we have accurate oxygen measurements. Just this is a float, and this are two sensors that measure oxygen. When the float arrives at the surface, it can take a reference in the atmosphere. So we know the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere, which means that each time the float is coming at the surface, every 10 days, we have a very good calibration. So this means now the floats are delivering high quality concentration thanks to this kind of calibration. At the same time, there is an historical database, which is GLODAP V2. For 30 years, the WOS community, and now it's the GOSHIP community, has acquired all the parameters that we are interested in, not only temperature and salinity, oxygen, but the nutrients, nitrate, silicated phosphate, and the carbonate system, so DIC, pH, alkalinity, and PCO2. So the objective, because the float is measuring TSO2, sometimes nutrients and sometimes pH, but the basic question was, can we use TSO2 only to predict the variable of interest for the biogeochemical oceanographer and so on. So we had two papers coming in Frontiers. The first one developed the principle of CANYON and was improved two years later, especially for the carbonate system. I will not go into the detail, but to quantify, for example, the PCO2, we need two variables from the four carbonate variables to predict it. And the combination of all of this give better accuracy of the retrieval using some kind of optimized combination than it was before. And now there is also a dedicated neural network for the MEDC, which is called CANYON-MED. The basic principle is geolocalization, day of the year, pressure, temperature, salinity, oxygen. And interestingly, because the data set here is over 30 years, we have put the year as a predictor also, especially for pH, DIC, and PCO2 to take into account the anthropogenic contribution of CO2 absorption in the ocean. And so we can generate the 3 nutrients and the 4 carbonate system. So this is the GLODAP V2 database. We have extract, so 20% for the validation, 80% for training. We have some, Z-square have been totally excluded from the analysis to have some kind of independent validation too. And we had also the hot time series station that operates since 20 or 30 years as also an independent validation. So I will not go into the detail of this network performance. It works quite well. This is just to illustrate, interestingly, for the hot time series and for the carbonate. You can see that this is the neural network. So this is typically a way to fill the gaps for, I would say, 5 years. They didn't measure pH, and you can see that you can see the decrease of pH toward the surface. This is typically an effect of the acidification due to the anthropogenic absorption of CO2 that we reflect with the neural network, taking into account the temporal component. Just to mention also, as soon as we have developed and begin to validate Canyon on this, we had identified a spurious profile, especially of oxygen, and we went back to the hot data manager and tell them we have issue with this oxygen profile, and they went back and they discard this profile. So it's also, this machine learning method is very interesting to, in some way, qualify the data. And I didn't tell this now, but we use Canyon profile to evaluate the nitrate and the pH profile that are this time measured by the fruits. Here is an application. So the second paper by Henri Bittisch, he was trying to combine the world ocean database oxygen, the GLODAP V2 you have seen, and the calibrated Argo profile. Just to show you the temporal resolution, you can see that Argo is beginning to provide more and more data. That was 2015, it's much more now. You can see that Argo in red has not the latitudinal bias, because for oceanographers that collect data on the ship, but you go preferably in the Southern Ocean in December and in the Labrador Sea in June, July, rather than in winter. So you have some kind of seasonal bias. And also here you have some bias towards the latitudinal, the northern hemisphere. And Henri was trying to illustrate, this is typically, I would say, an illustration of the filling the gaps. Here you have a proxy that is called the Revel buffer factor that in some way summarizes the capability of the ocean to act as a buffer to absorb CO2 of anthropogenic origin. So this was a map established from cruise data in 1994 and using real measurements. And so Henri was computing this map just with oxygen, but with GLODAP V2. And as soon as we put all the data together, we fill this map very nicely. And interestingly, it can try to derive over the 30 years of acquisition some kind of trends and latitudinal trends in the capability of the ocean to store carbon, and just to see that it becomes more and more difficult for the high latitude environment. So there is a clear seasonal gradient on this. So this Canyon products for the moment, it was only, so this is the map of oxygen profile that are in delay mode, and that was released later last year in 2021. So we have for the moment only nutrients, and sorry, what is planned as part of this new cycle of Copernicus Marine Service, we will deliver carbonate system over the vertical. And very likely in 2024, this data will be delivered in near real time, because oxygen now is moving in near real time at Copernicus. So basically, we could be able to contribute to delivery such kind of vertical profile of nutrients and carbonate system in near real time. I will finish by a short presentation of papers that came out early this week by a PhD student in the US, and we were associated with him. He had the idea to try to make EOF analysis of vertical time series, 1 year time series of chlorophyll A and backscattering from the surface to 1,000 meters. And he was doing some kind of clusterization of the singular vector coefficient, and end up with such kind of bioregionalization, which take into account both the chlorophyll A and the backscattering from from the surface to 1,000 meters. And here we have 6 biomes that can be extracted from this. Each point on the map corresponds to 1 year time series. So it's the middle point of the flow trajectory. So you have nearly 420 yearly time series. And you can see that we have equatorial waters. We have here the Arabian Sea that came out very differently from the other. I will come back later on this. Here you have the subtropical gyre, the permanent deep chlorophyll maximum. Here you have the seasonal deep maximum. We have a lot of data coming from the Med Sea here. We have the low chlorophyll bloom and the high chlorophyll bloom. Low chlorophyll bloom in the Southern Ocean and high chlorophyll bloom essentially in the Northern Atlantic. And here you have the average time series within each biome from the January to December, and there are the phase from 6 months for the Southern Ocean. And what is interesting, because we have within this biome, we have the oxygen measurements, we are, for example, able to compute canyon products, so nutrients, as well as carbonate system within each biome. So we have the average value of these key biogeochemical parameters. Here, I just showcased the nitracline depth, and the mixed layer depth is measured, and mostly a photic depth is measured, but could be modeled too. And you can see this is the chlorophyll, and you can see the link between, for example, the nitracline depth and the photic depth in the permanent DCM of subtropical gyre. You can see in the Arabian Sea, we have the effect of the monsoon and the reversal of the monsoon that we can see here in the chlorophyll, as well as in the environmental variable. And you can see also in the Arabian Sea, we have high backscattering level, which is linked to the oxygen minimum zone and the presence of denitrification bacteria that have a high backscattering effect. And you can see in high chlorophyll bloom, we can see the carbon in some way that is progressively exported after the bloom. This is just an illustration that if we look at various layers below the productive zone, so for each of the 6 biomes, you can see that we can here have some information of the transport of carbon at depth as a function of time for especially the high latitude environment. And this is to illustrate for 2 typical waters, equatorial waters and low chlorophyll bloom, that we can extract on mensual basis. For example, typical environmental drivers of phytoplankton biomass. There is one that I like quite a lot, is the light at the nitracline level, that for the stratified tropical environment, which is very important to set the magnitude of the so-called deep chlorophyll bloom. So we can have a variety of output, and we begin to discover and to play with this kind of bioregionalization. So my last slide. So I will say that BGC Argo is progressively delivering a large amount of biogeochemical data that start filling our observational gaps. So we have the 6 variables that I have presented. And by integrating historical data set, in this case, for us, it was GLODAP V2 with BGC Argo, we can fill additional gaps through the prediction of what I call virtual variables. And this has a high potential for remote area and high latitude during harsh ocean state condition. For example, it's very difficult to measure the PCO2 flux at the ocean interface in the Southern Ocean, which is a critical sink for CO2. If we have floats with oxygen, and even if the accuracy of the machine learning method is less than a sensor, because you will never send a boat in the Southern Ocean in winter. So I think that the statistical effect is very important to contribute to such kind of observation. And by integrating BGC Argo and OceanColor, we have now the capability to develop comprehensive 3D, 4D representation of the optics or optic. And so BGC Argo yearly time series, that was the last example of the bioregionalization, can be used to define biomes, taking into account the 0,000 meter water column. And this, we begin to work with Mercator people, can be a useful way to provide average condition for the initialization and the parameterization of the models. Thank you.
I was muted. Thank you very much, Hervé, for this very, very nice presentation.